All right, so I'm Gary Dickson. I'm currently a visiting professor at Indiana University in the graphic design program while I simultaneously trying to work towards my PhD in HCI. So as Erik said, this is a paper that he and I worked on. Came out of some research that we've been conducting over the last couple of years. So I want to just start out sort of addressing why this interest in methods and why this sort of why I'm here. So I started a long time ago as a designer in the late 80s, in fact. Being a design practitioner, I did that for many years. And arguably did it well at some point. Finished my, so I transitioned slowly then from being a practitioner into being a design educator. And that transition feels like it's still sort of ongoing. So from practitioner to educator, and hopefully more and more of a researcher as I move forward. So I have this deep abiding interest in the methods that designers use. I care about how they use them, why they use them, and all these sorts of things. So I begin by talking a little bit about the study that we conducted that resulted in this paper. We did sort of snowball sampling to find subjects to interview, acquaintances of acquaintances. We gathered about 11 subjects that were open to being interviewed. We examined the methods that they developed. And then we conducted interviews with those that were open to that, and others preferred to respond in writing in form of a survey. And then we would follow up with them, and we created a sort of an ongoing dialogue where they would send us additional information. We would talk with them about their concerns and whatnot. And that's how the study proceeded. Now, for the purposes of this paper, we had to sort of define what methods are and what a successful method is. And pretty much what Colin outlined as a definition of a method is the same definition that we are operating by. It's a technique or a framework for thinking that supports the design process of a professional designer. As far as success, that's a harder one to identify. Rather than trying to quantify what a good method is to produce a good design, we define success as methods that are spread broadly amongst practitioners. So a method that is picked up by practitioners and that spreads through sort of the industry. So as we did this, we thought that we would interview some academics that developed methods and some practitioners that develop methods. But what we found as we interviewed them, that really not very many of them identified themselves purely as an academic or as a practitioner, but rather they all sort of fell within this continuum between academic and practitioner. There were a few that were situated sort of right in the middle with one foot in both worlds. And those were actually some of the more interesting conversations that we had. So I'm going to just kind of go through some of the conversations that we had with our subjects. Several of them spoke about sort of the origins of where methods come from, the trends in methods, and again, as Colin talked about, the sort of explosion of books and encyclopedias that are out there. And this particular subject commented that they felt that all these different methods were actually just founded on a few existing methods that people had taken and combined in unique ways. Some of our subjects spoke about why they developed new methods, and So from both ends of the scale, in academia and in practice. In practice, most of the people that were developing methods were doing so just because they're in the trenches trying to get their work done, trying to do good work for their clients. On the other hand, in academia, sometimes methods are developed purely as sort of a touch point for research. And then we talked with some of them, and some of them spoke about what a successful method looks like. And comments were made like, if people are having fun using the methods, then they're successful. Or if it's efficient and effective and enjoyable. And then many of them spoke about what the methods are sort of made up of. What are the elements that go into creating a new method? And most of them talked about this way that they'll see a method over here and a method over here, and they see sort of an interesting way of combining different methods, or even combining different technologies to use in the methods that they develop. So the upshot of all of this, sort of our contribution, is that it seems that a lot of the people that we talked with were not necessarily carrying out method development as a user-centered design process, even though most of those people would advocate a user-centered process in design work. So we feel that maybe method design could benefit from adopting more core characteristics from user-centered design. That is, rigorous, extensive, expert testing, and doing that testing in actual context of use. One of our subjects very aptly stated that method development is a meta-design process. In other words, thinking about developing new methods should be thought of as a method is designed by a designer for designers to design with. And just one last note. I think the term method development is not maybe the best term. I really, as I was going through all of this, it struck me very strongly that rather than using method development, if we instead think of, say, method design, because that's really what creating a new method is we're designing something for designers to use. That's it.
Okay, the time for some question. Anyone?